This is the Sony PlayStation Iceberg. We're going to go through almost every PlayStation facts and history, at least I can cover, because it's going to be kind of a long video. So let's go over it already. Abandon is a video game announced for the PlayStation 5 and potentially the PC. It's described as a first-person shooter survival horror game. It was being developed by Blue Box Game Studios, an independent developer. It's more well known for its hype and controversy surrounding it. Supposedly the team announced that it will be inspired or the next entry of supposedly the next Silent Hill game. And there's just so much information out there about whether it being involved with Hideo Kojima, the creator of the Metal Gear Solid series, and with how the fifth game kind of just had no real ending to it, and supposedly this could have been like a spin-off or whatever that I could find. And most of its hype kind of just died down after the release of this teaser app that was released on the PS5, where there was really nothing in it, and only there was just one trailer, and it was just just some guy walking, whatever. And the hype just kind of died down, and people were telling them they were like frauds, and it was like a fake game. And honestly, there wasn't even no info on the game itself after that point. It kind of just seems that this game was more vaporware, as the last two games they developed were basically scams. So I don't think this game will probably come out, or this will even be involved with Kojima at all, to be honest. PS Now was a subscription service. They allow streaming for a select number of games in their PlayStation consoles, from the PS3, PS4, PS5, and even the Vita. It was also released on PC while using technology from Gaikai, a company that Sony acquired. It was released in 2014 in North America, and it was pretty different from how it would later become. It wasn't like a Netflix for games per se. It was more of buying time, basically. Like, there was one tier for if you want to play for 4 hours, you have to pay $2.99, and obviously that didn't really sit right with people because they don't really own it, or they don't own it for the time for the subscription. So they kind of shift towards that front, basically. And it was only available in certain markets, so it didn't have a wide variety of people that would access it. And more to the ends of its life, it would mimic more to what PS Plus would become, and that's probably why it would merge with PS Plus in 2022. There were rumors starting in around 2021, I think, where it was a project called Spartacus, and that would just merge the two together and for just have one big subscription service, basically. Cyberpunk 2077 was a highly anticipated game that was released in December of 2020, and it received pretty mixed to negative reviews, mostly probably because of the game-breaking bugs and glitches that will make it unplayable, especially on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And Sony received a lot of refund requests, and they actually started giving out refunds, and it was pretty abnormal for them because they rarely give out refunds. If you buy a game and you download it, but if you want to return it, they won't give it to you. So it was pretty wild for them to start giving out refunds just like that. The game will be removed from the PlayStation Store for a couple months actually, and before they started giving out patches and updates to the game. It's pretty wild. I don't think they ever did that to any other games. I know there's been games with a lot of bugs and glitches, but this was the first time they ever did something like this. It was pretty crazy. PlayStation Video is a distribution service offered by Sony and was available in a wide variety of the consoles and even Windows PC their Bravia TVs and their Xperia phones, and is where you can buy and or rent movies and TV shows from a wide variety of from different studios. And in 2021, they would give out free movies via PS Plus in Poland, like Deadshot. I mean, who wouldn't want that, you know? Unfortunately, in March 2nd, 2021, they would discontinue offering new purchases and rentals of movies and TV through PS Video. Now, another thing I don't think people really remember was that Sony was making this TV show called Powers, and they actually premiered the first episode for free for PS3 users and also I think on YouTube as well. And it was just like another initiative that they made. I think they even promoted this TV show on the official PlayStation YouTube channel. So yeah, I don't think it really received very well. I don't know if it was like accurate to what the source material, or maybe it just wasn't good enough. PSVR is a virtual reality headset released on October 13, 2016 for around $399, and it's the only console that can provide VR games. And it wasn't the first attempt by Sony to provide VR for their products. They did this all the way back in 1996 with the Glasstron. In 2009, they worked on Project Morpheus, which is another attempt at VR using PS Move control. They actually had a demo where they used a level in God of War 3. And in 2022, Sony revealed the next PSVR 2, which will be more accurate tracking and headset. June of 2022, Sony would merge PS Plus and PS Now to combine into PS Plus again, but with 3 tiers this time, as PS Plus, Basic, Extra, and Premium. And it's basically the same if you have PS Plus and PS Now, 2 separate subscriptions, but now it's just merged into one, which makes it a lot easier and obviously better for the consumer. And in the higher tiers, you will get access to more games, more classic games basically. And it seems more of like an answer to Xbox Game Pass, where Game Pass you pay a subscription and you can get access to a lot of games, and most of these games are day one, so you wouldn't even need to pay full price. And that's basically what this new PS Plus model is doing right now. Like the Stray game that came out for free on PS Plus if you had it. During the PS Plus 2 relaunch, people noticed that Tekken 2 was priced at $9,000, and even the director of Tekken had noticed this, which is pretty funny. In July 19 at 2 o'clock a.m. at 2022, PlayStation Italy tweeted this, whatever the hell this is. Yeah, I don't know what the hell this is. I don't know who or what. Another Kafifi moment probably. I looked this up on the internet and there's just nothing really, so it's a lot of baloney, I guess. InZone is a series of gaming peripherals for PlayStation 5 and PC, and it's not particularly a PlayStation brand of like headsets and monitors, but it's just kind of an overall thing that they have released. And it carries the same design language with the PS5, like the PS5 console. You can see that with their headset and monitors. And it's a lot different from like their PlayStation headsets that they released, like the Pulse 3D headset. And it's a lot different from that. It's still the same design and language from it, but it's kind of different basically. PlayStation Vue was a streaming service owned and operated by Sony Interactive Entertainment, similar to something like YouTube TV and Sling, that combined live TV and on-demand video. It launched in 2015 and ending in early 2020 due to low subscriber counts and high expenses, and it was only available in the United States. I think the reason why it was only available in the United States was because Sony actually released a Play TV tuner for other territories that will essentially be a DVR that will record shows and TVs and whatnot directly into the PS3 hard drive. And I think that's why there was never really a like PSVR outside the US. Now, Sony as a whole has been acquiring companies for ages. Their first acquisition under PlayStation was Psygnosis in 1993. During 2019 and 2020, Microsoft had been purchasing studios like ZeniMax Media and Activision. Sony was pressured to do the same, and in 2019, Sony bought Insomniac for $230 million. In 2021, they bought the EVO Sports Championship Series. Harris Marquee, Nixxes Software, Bluepoint Games. In 2022, they bought Bungie, the makers of Halo, for $3.7 billion. They also own a 5% stake in Epic Games and a minority stake in Discord. They used to have a 90% stake in Square Enix, but they have sold. But there are still rumors of them buying them even today. So every PlayStation system can be used as a media player. For instance, the first PlayStation can be used as a CD player. The second PlayStation can be used as a DVD player, which at the time was a pretty cheap DVD player actually. And for PS3, and it was also a Blu-ray player, which also at the same time was the cheapest Blu-ray player. And for PSP, for instance, it was probably like the first mobile phone where you could watch movies, play games. There was even Skype on it, so it was kind of like the first iPhone basically. And for PS4, they kind of take a step back. You can still play DVDs and Blu-rays, but those functionality of the PS3, you know, where you can have pictures and even CDs and CD-ROM uses, was pretty much gone on PS4. And not even the PS4 Pro, where you could play Blu-ray 4K DVDs, you can't even play those. But on PS5 you can. And obviously the function of having like pictures and like CDs, CD-ROMs was kind of gone after PS4, and PS5 was pretty absent. PS Studios is a division under Sony that will oversee all PlayStation exclusives, and in 2005 it was called Worldwide Studios, but in 2020 they renamed it to PS Studios. And they will oversee 20 studios with over 2,700 employees. And I also talk about it here, but there's also PlayStation Productions, which is basically their movie counterpart, where they will make movies based off their games. And they were in production of the Uncharted movie since 2008, and it will finally release in 2021. And they have revealed other franchises they would like to make, such as the Gran Turismo movie, a Ghost of Tsushima movie, Jack and Daxter movie, Days Gone movie, Gravitos movie. And they're well underway on the production of The Last of Us TV show with HBO, and the Twisted Metal TV show, a God of War TV show, and a Horizon TV show. So it seems like we're gonna get a lot more game movies from them. Whether it'll be good will be up to us and them. Now, before the release of The Last of Us Part 2, Naughty Dog has been getting some quite leaks from them. For instance, someone leaked a pretty crucial moment in The Last of Us Part 2, and it was leaked a couple months before the game came out, and it had a lot of negative feedback from it. And they've been getting leaks ever since. They had a leak for The Last of Us 1 remaster, and you know, obviously more negative feedbacks from them. And I'm not really sure what's going on with Naughty Dog at the moment. I don't know if someone's inside's been leaking all this stuff, but yeah, they really need to figure that out.
Now there is no hope.
And Kratos cast himself from the highest mountain in all of Greece. After 10 years of suffering, 10 years of endless nightmares, it would finally come to an end. Death would be his escape from madness. But it had not always been this way.
Sony Computer Entertainment, or for short SCE, and nowadays Sony Interactive Entertainment, is a company that handles PlayStation manufacturing and distribution, as well as the software. Founded in 1993, it is the largest game publisher and manufacturer, as it retains 85% of the entire market share, with 20 developers releasing over 2,000 games and having sold 581 million consoles sold worldwide. Ken Kutaragi, the father of PlayStation, was an engineer working for Sony in the 1980s during the original Famicom. He was impressed by the system, that he designed the sound chip for the next iteration, the Super Famicom, also known as SNES, in secret. Although people at Sony thought that video games was a fad, the CEO of Sony would let Kutaragi finish his work on the Super Famicom sound chip and would partner with Nintendo. Sony and Nintendo would actually work together on an add-on for the Super Famicom that would play CD discs. The deal eventually fell through when Sony disagreed on their licensing agreement, and Nintendo would pursue Panasonic for their CD add-on. Ken would continue making the PlayStation as Sony would enter the console space in 1994. Ken would be appointed CEO of SCE as he would oversee development and research of the PlayStation 2, PlayStation Portable, and PlayStation 3. He will leave in 2007, but is still active in gaming. Ken's first game credit will be Tekken in 1994. PlayStation Vita is the second portable handheld from Sony, released in Japan on December 17, 2011, and the rest of the world February 22, 2012. With an OLED panel, touchscreen, analog joysticks, 3D support, and intended for big budget console quality games. It competed with the Nintendo 3DS, which released earlier that year. Sales started off strong, but later fall off due to the success with the Nintendo 3DS, probably due to a number of factors. For instance, if you wanted to have expandable memory on the Vita, you would need to buy a proprietary SD card slot from Sony themselves, which was considerably more expensive than regular SD card slots, as well as a lack of focus on its games. I mean, the PS Vita had games such as Killzone Mercenary, which was basically the Killzone game from the PS3 on the Vita, and Persona 4 Golden, which is an RPG, pretty good one. But there was just a lack of software and hype around the Vita as time progressed for its library, and they focused more on indie games. So instead of like having those big budget games, they went more smaller indie games, which kind of held off the Vita's life cycle. And it's a pretty funny weird contrast, as Nintendo's handheld was doing much better than their console counterpart, the Wii U, which was selling pretty poorly at the time, and with Sony's new PS4 console selling pretty well, but their portable handheld was selling pretty badly. Phil Harrison. He started working with Sony in 1992 as an executive manager in Europe and North America, as well as vice president of third-party relations and research development for SCE, and was president of SCE Worldwide Studios, which seeks to combine all PlayStation studios under one, overseeing their games and relations with other developers. He left SCE for Atari in 2008. He left Atari in 2010 to join Gaikai. He left in 2012 for Microsoft Game Division for the Kinect. He left in 2015 and to join as Google as vice president, where he would announce the Stadia. His first public appearance was in the reveal of the PlayStation 3. Also, he will also reveal the Xbox Kinect, which is, pretty okay things, to be honest. And his first game credit was a game called Wild Arms for the PS1, released in 1996. Kaz Hirai is a businessman who worked for Sony's music group. He joined SCEA in 1995 and has become heavily involved in the gaming space, replacing Ken Kutaragi and becoming CEO of Sony from 2012 to 2018. Although he stepped down, he is still an advisor to the Sony Corporation. He will also deliver the worst news any kid could have gotten.
$599 US.
His first game credit was Tomba from 1997. Part of the early success of the PlayStation was the inclusion of demo discs. Whether it came included with the system, they mailed them to you, or you won some prizes in Pizza Hut. They were a great way of marketing the new PlayStation brand by exposing the possibilities and library of what the PlayStation can do. Demo discs were part of the PlayStation until the PS3, with the inclusion of downloadable demos on the PlayStation Store. The last demo disc was on the PS4, showcasing VR games. Mark Cerny had been involved in video games since the 1980s, after dropping out of college and starting his first game, Marble Madness, or also Major Havoc. He joined Sega during the development of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and joined Crystal Dynamics, to make some 3DO games. He left Crystal to join
Universal Interactive Studios production,
working on Crash, and that will lead him to the opportunity for him to work with Sony after Universal was in financial trouble, and he even make his own company, Sony Games. He was contacted by Sony to work on the PS2 Emotion Engine, while also working with Naughty Dog and Insomnia Games. He worked for Ice Team during the PS3's development. After disappointing sales of the PS3, he was hired for the PS4 lead designer, heading for a more dev-friendly approach. He was even the director of his own game, Knack. He was lead designer for the Vita and PS5. His first game credit is of course Crash Bandicoot, released on September 9, 1996. Shuhei Yoshida is a businessman that worked for Sony in the 1980s and would become part of the PlayStation project in 1993, working on third-party licensing. In 2000, he will be appointed Vice President of Sony Computer Entertainment in North America. In 2008, he will also become President of Sony Worldwide Studios through 2019. He will also push for indie development in PS4 and PlayStation Vita. His first game credit is Project Horned Owl in 1995. Sony was present in every E3 since 1995, also the same year E3 started. Even though the booths were small at first, they were a strong and serious competitor to Sega and Nintendo. The first games they would show was Battle Arena 2 Shinden, Ridge Racer, Twisted Metal, and Warhawk. Also will be Polygon Man's only major appearance. In E3 1999, they teased the next-gen console.
All we're seeing here today is the tip of the iceberg.
In the following year, they showed a demo of Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, showcasing the PlayStation 2 new hardware.
I can't wait.
It's incredible. I've never seen any video game like it before. It was like watching a movie.
Kojima and TV did an awesome job. It's reason to buy PlayStation 2 alone, so.
In E3 2003, they showcased the iToy, and Ken Kutaragi would tease PlayStation as the Walkman of the 21st century with PlayStation Portable.
That I would like to share with you today. There's going to be a new baby within the family. It's not a PlayStation 3. Okay. Sony Computer Entertainment will be launching new handheld entertainment platform in 2004. The name of this new platform is called PSP. Yes, PlayStation Portable. It's simple. The baby is in the incubator at the moment, and even the father of the baby, I can bring him out of the incubator. I can look at his face through the windows. He is really cute. But as a family member, he has the same DNA.
E3 2005, they will showcase the power of the cell processor along with the LOD, Blocks of Ducks demo.
So here's my duck, stunningly rendered in real time. This is me driving it around. Man in suit uses game controller, shock. And we have the ability to render the water in great detail. As I jump the duck in and out, you can see the caustics and all the effects that are being rendered in real time. But he's still a little bit lonely. I think he still needs more friends. So let's stick in a couple more here. And this gives you an example of the overwhelming performance of PlayStation 3 and everything that you can do. Some of them are so happy to leave the bath, they jump out.
And a new Gran Turismo. They will also show Final Fantasy VII demo remake that won't come out for another 15 years, as well as the infamous Killzone 2 demo, and as well as Neo, another game that won't come out for another decade. E3 2006, perhaps the cringiest E3.
私はゲームするときにモンキーが猿
was the game they showed Gran Turismo 4 and the Eye of Judgment, an AR card game. that Ridge Racer moment.
Because I'm not a very good player even there. Game is powered by Namco. It's Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer. Remember that one? All right, so let me go right ahead.
Giant enemy crabs based in Japanese history.
2 is an action game which is based on Japanese history. Being based on history, the stages of the game will also be based on famous battles which actually took place in ancient Japan. For example, this battle of So here's this giant enemy crab. What I'll do is use
the 6-axis controller, fake games, and the shock heard around the world, $599 US.
For $599 US, 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 We sent a message, and the message was clear.
At E3 2011, they addressed the PSN hack and apologized to customers before the presentation starting.
This isn't the first time that I've come to the stage at an E3 press conference with an elephant in the room. And of course, I'm referring to the PlayStation Network outage. And this is the first opportunity for me to personally address everybody and discuss it a little bit. And I know the network outage was costly to you. And what's been incredibly inspiring is your support and your offers to help get things back up to speed, and we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for you, so I thank you very much. To our retail partners, you gave us shelf space when there was no PlayStation brand, and you've given us more than our fair share since 1995 when we launched the original PlayStation. Which brings me to the audience that I'm most interested in addressing, and those are our consumers. You are the lifeblood of the company. Without you, there is no PlayStation. And I want to apologize both personally and on behalf of the company for any anxiety that we've caused you. I know we took you away from doing what you enjoy most, connecting and gaming with friends all over the world and enjoying the many entertainment options on PlayStation Network.
As well as showing the PlayStation Vita. Before E3 2013 even started, there were leaks from Microsoft that they would include DRM and no use games policy and the next
And fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message if you don't, like it?
If you have zero access to the internet, that is an offline device. I mean, seriously, when I read the blog.
And Sony knew exactly what they had to do by doing everything the opposite of what they were trying to do. And at E3 of that year, they rubbed it in their face by allowing used games and no DRM.
PlayStation 4 won't impose any new restrictions on the use of PS4 game loop. When a gamer buys a PS4 disc, they have the rights to use that copy of the game. They can trade in the game at retail, sell it to another person, lend it to a friend, or keep it forever. In addition, PlayStation 4 disc-based games don't need to be connected online to play.
Which is pretty much the start of the 8th generation, effectively winning the whole thing. And they had some pretty good shows after those E3s, but E3 2018 will be the last time Sony will show up, as they will move on to digital-only presentations, such as the State of Play. Sean Layden is a businessman who joined Sony in 1987 as communications assistant to Sony co-founder Akio Morita. He then managed SCE London Studios and later SCE Europe as vice president. After many years, he would become CEO of Sony Computer Entertainment North America, focusing on worldwide studios. He left in 2019, possibly due to internal power struggle with Jim Ryan, who would become Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO. By the way, Sean's first game credit is a game called G-Force in 1997. And while he hasn't really made a statement, he has liked posts and tweets that are critical of Jim Ryan's new approach in SIE's new direction. As recently, like today, as I'm recording this, they announced a price hike in the PS5, which not many people approve of, you know?
That little smile he has? That is years of training.
Jim Ryan's first game is called For Bold Move Street Racing. What the hell is this? Jack Trenton started in video games in 1986, working for Activision through 1991. He will join Sony in 1995 as Director of Sales in SCEA. He will be promoted to President and CEO of SCEA in 2006. His first game credit is Rise of the Robots, but under Sony, it is Twisted Metal 2. He will later leave in 2014, but somewhat still active in gaming. Kevin Butler is a character used in marketing, portrayed by Jerry Lambert during the PlayStation 3's revitalization efforts. During this time, Sony slashed the price of PS3 and started getting some good exclusives. It was pretty successful and everyone liked it, and he would even make an appearance at Sony's E3 2010 conference.
Kev, you know, there was a rumor you were going to show up.
Peter, you can't believe everything you read on the internet. So am I crazy, or did I just see 100 French acrobats prancing around an arena the other night? I hear there was a sale on blue ponchos. I love gaming, okay? I love you too. I love walk-off homers and headshots. I love drifting a turn at 100 miles an hour in boss battles with a 600-foot-tall Greek god who may or may not be your father. Gaming is having a ridiculously huge TV in a tiny one-room apartment. Staying up till 3 a.m. to earn a trophy that isn't real.
In 9/11 of 2012, Sony sued Lampard due to trademark infringement for being in a Wii commercial. He was not even allowed to do gamer advertisements for 2 years, and the character was never used again. And in that Wii commercial, he wasn't even promoting it. It was something about another company that had the Wii in the commercial. And yeah, it was pretty sad to see that happen. Andrew House started working in Sony in 1990 in the Tokyo Corporate Communications Department. In 1995, he would transfer to SCE's marketing of the PlayStation 1, as well as working on PlayStation Underground. In 1996, he was Vice President of Marketing in SCEA. He would be promoted several times until becoming President and CEO of SCEI, replacing Kasserai. He will reveal the PS4. In 2017, he will leave the company. His first game credit is Epidemic from the PlayStation 1 in 1995. Now, every console has some kind of accessories to go along with it, and PlayStation is no different. Back in the day, saving was a luxury, as consoles at the time didn't have any hard drives that would save checkpoints. Although some cartridges included batteries to save, such as The Legend of Zelda on NES, most games used the password system. But Sony introduced the memory card, either included with the system or sold separately. The official memory card will hold only 15 blocks, meaning you can only hold a certain amount before needing more. The memory card will be adapted into the PlayStation 2 with larger size with the 8 megabytes and more. And there was even an adapter for the PS3 to read the memory cards. The original PlayStation shipped with this controller, and in 1997 Sony introduced the DualShock controller with dual analog sticks and vibration support. It can also use the PlayStation 1 DualShock to play PlayStation 2 games, although not all the games. There were also a lot of third-party controllers and weird ones as well. There was a multi-adapter, and it can't be a 90s console without a mouse accessory. There was also a fishing reel controller, there was some light guns controller, and also the Pocket Station, which was the first portable handheld from Sony that would play like small mini games that would be compatible with PS1 games. It only sold in Japan, with selling over 5 million units, and it never reached outside. There was even a small little LCD screen that can be attached to the console, and also some fight sticks and flight sticks controllers. For PlayStation 2, they kept the DualShock, but this time you can also connect the DualShock 2 to certain arcade games such as Tekken 5. There was a racing wheel with pedals, arcade sticks, microphones for the SingStar games via USB, dance pads, a buzz buzzer for the game Buzz, DVD remote, multi-taps, the iToy, USB headsets, and the expansion bay. The expansion bay also allowed the use of an HDD, which was not used for saving, but to reduce load times, like The Sims 2 and RPG Maker. The HDD can also be used with the network adapter that can play multiplayer games, such as Final Fantasy XI and MMORPG on the PlayStation 2. And with the HDD and the network adapter, you can also use Linux with its mouse and keyboard accessory. Also, your expansion bay was allegedly used to store marijuana. What? Also, the vertical stand was sold separately. For the PS3 launch, there was no DualShock, but it has the 6-axis motion control due to some legal issues. But in 2008, they brought back the DualShock 3 with Rumble back in. There was a wireless keypad, PlayStation Move with the PlayStation 3 camera to mimic the Wii. There was another buzz buzzer, a Logitech racing wheel, Bluetooth Blu-ray remote, a guitar, microphone, and DJ accessories. U-Draw game tablet that can draw stuff on it, and also the reason THQ is no longer with us. You can plug in any USB and Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, various headsets to your obscenities with. The Play TV, Torn, the PSI mentioned before, but can also use to chat with the XNB. There were several printers that were compatible with it. Officially, there wasn't much on the PSP, but there was the camera with its unique games, AV cables and batteries. Third party, there were various cases and pouches, screen protectors. There was also the GPS receiver, stereo speakers, LCD screens, grips, SD card slots, and skins. PS4 had the fancy new DualShock 4, VR as mentioned, a camera for streaming, a vertical stand sold separately, charging station, and at launch, the PS4 model had a glossy side that you could remove and put skins on. The DualShock 4 also had a back buttons attachment that was released later in its life. In the box included one earbud, and PS Vita can also be used as a second restraint via remote play. Some games also use apps for some gimmicky stuff. It was the same deal with PS Vita accessories like the PSP. There was a car adapter, official earbuds, PlayStation TV or PS Vita TV in Japan that can show PS Vita on any TV. Not all games can work on it though. Portable chargers, USB cradle, and all that third-party stuff. And of course, you can't forget about the proprietary SD card slot. For PS5, you already know what it is, but they had those plates that are pretty pricey for some reason. Wait, what is this? What is this? Smoke pipe. Is this marijuana again? Also, you can't forget the chainsaw as a controller. Sony's strategy to the games industry is to not directly compete with Nintendo and Sega. They first started with cryptic messaging with Enos lives and you are not E, which is basically a weird way of saying that the PS1 is launching in September 9th in North America. They will also ship demo discs as well, as not many companies did that either. After PlayStation would start getting their ground, they would show their mascots such as Crash, Spyro, and Sweet Tooth.
Step out of the car now, sir. You're way over the speed limit. You've run 2 guys off the road. You've been throwing green stuff into the path of oncoming vehicles. Step out of the car now. We got you on video. Hey, Murphy, look what I found in the trunk.
Dragon, the way he blows fire at chicks like me. This is an official protest. I am an anti-Spyro activist. Genghis, come. What did you say?
You're toast.
They will market for a more mature campaign, showing that gaming was not just for kids.
Truth be known,
a life of dubious virtue.
I won't deny I've been engaged in violence, even indulged in it.
I've assailed adversaries, and not merely in self-defense.
But I have commanded armies
and conquered worlds.
And though in achieving these things,
I've set morality aside.
I have no regrets.
For though I've led a double life, at least I can say
I've lived.
During the PlayStation 2, they would keep that momentum by also having David Lynch direct some PlayStation commercials.
Non lassù, non qua giù. Non siamo svegli, non. Dormiamo.
Maintaining some very questionable ads, and there are indeed a lot of those weird ads, especially the 90s and other companies doing their own weird little things. During the PlayStation 2, there was a pretty interesting commercial which would showcase the future in 2078 with the PlayStation 9, showing that PlayStation 2 was just the start.
PlayStation 9's new electronic spores tap straight into your adrenal gland. PS9 has improved retinal scanning. A mind control system. Holographic movie surround vision. PlayStation 9. Teleport yours today.
During the PS3, they thought it would be a good idea to have this really creepy commercial of a baby, which was the start of the $150 million campaign. But ever since then, and with Kevin Butler, they sort of chilled out and started making commercials again that will be more for everyone and not just for mature audiences or the like. With the recently Play Has No Limits.
Only 2 eggs today? Solidus must have taken the day off. 7, 8, 9, 2, 5, 9, 0, 3, 6, 0, 3, 3, 0, 5, 3, 0, 5, 4, 8, 8, 2, 4, 4, 6, 6, 5, 2, 1.
Last Guardian is a game developed by Team Ico Japan Studios. Beginning work in 2007, it was announced in E3 2009, planned for 2011. Following the success of Shadow of Colossus, it's about a boy and about a griffin creature. Development was slow due to the cell processor, and testers thought the game was slow and boring, delaying it even further past the release date. After most of the team leaving, it was thought to be cancelled until E3 2015. It was reshown again, and with more teams added to actually finish the game and transfer on PS4. And they actually finished it, releasing it December 6, 2016, with high to mixed reviews.
Got a little Last Guardian little doggy next to him. He actually bought a plush of that dog, that fucker dog that doesn't even walk. The shittiest AI I've ever seen. That fucker dog that all he does is he fucks you over. He bought a plush of that dog. That's his favorite game.
Also, funny thing, in the E3 2009 demo, the game was really slow, like FPS wise, and they actually had to speed up the footage to make it have a more stable frame rate. Kojima Productions, first founded in April 1st, 2005, after Konami merged together with different teams. They will develop Metal Gear games and Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns with the Patriots exclusive for the PlayStation 3. In 2015, it was stated that Kojima and a few others were planning on leaving after MGS5 would be concluded. Konami retaliated, removed Hideo Kojima's name from the box art, but they were still damage controlling it, stating that he was still in the company. The 2015 Game Awards ceremony, MGS5 won Best Action Adventure Game, but Kojima was not present to accept the awards.
Being with us tonight, but unfortunately he was informed by a lawyer representing Konami just recently that he would not be allowed to travel to tonight's awards ceremony to accept any awards.
Konami was seen as the bad guys, since it seemed they killed off one of their best-selling franchises, Ant-Man. In 2015, the studio will be shut down, but also in the same year, Kojima and other Metal Gear developers with Sony Computer Entertainment reformed an independent studio, announcing their first game, Death Stranding, to be released first on PlayStation 4. Even though Kojima and his team created Death Stranding, the Death Stranding IP is actually owned by Sony.
Friend Hideo Kojima, my friend. Good to see you, my friend. So good to have you with us.
PT is a super scary game from 7780 Studios, or also Kojima Productions, in collaboration with Guillermo del Toro and Norman Reedus. It was an interactive teaser that will be revealed as the next Silent Hill game, where you will walk in one hallway in one house, solving puzzles against spook. Unfortunately, I never got to play it, but I really wish I did. It was revealed in 2014 and was downloaded over 1 million times. PT was actively teased in MGS5. In April 29, 2015, it was removed from Konami after Kojima left Konami, while us also cancelling it. Konami will really be seen as the bad guys, as they seem that they really don't care about any of the franchises that started their company. But there are fan remakes that will help keep the PT story alive. And PT in PS4 consoles will be sold for thousands. It will also influence a lot of games, one being Resident Evil 7 with an FPS perspective. PlayStation Home was Sony's online virtual world for the PlayStation 3, first announced in GDC 2007. It was seen sort of Second Life, but on the PlayStation 3 with its own flair. It was Phil Harrison's pet project, where users can interact with each other in a free experience powered by microtransactions, and it was also a showcase of the PlayStation Network. It launched in 2008 in beta and stayed that way. Users can customize their avatar and will be given a free apartment. Users can be able to access public core spaces with different themes, such as the Action District, Sports Walk, Adventure District, Pier Park, Indie Park, Home Theater, Bowling Alley, Shopping Mall, Gamers Lounge, and unique events. But there's still a lot more that could be seen. And each public place will also have little mini games, from racing games to shooting games to puzzle games. And some mini games were also somewhat like mini demos, such as the Uncharted 3 game and the FIFA 2010 World Cup game. Starting in 2010, they will have a virtual E3 booth advertising their games. Players could communicate with mobile features or voice chat via headset. PlayStation Home was expensive to manage, but how they alleviated that was inclusion of costumes and skins to buy. For an example, you could buy the Stormtrooper outfit or the Hellgas Soldier outfit. But aside from outfits, you can also buy personal spaces where you can invite friends. Personal spaces can range from a simple new home at the beach or even a scary castle. But the one I remember the most, I actually have at the time, was the Loot Space Apartment, which is a home like in outer space, in a spaceship. And you can also watch Crackle TV on it too, live. Players could launch games while inside Home, and the first live streaming event for Home was NASA's final launch of Space Shuttle Discovery. And I remember PlayStation Home was being a cool place you can hang out with. Since it was free for everybody, you could meet like a lot of people and play. You could spend hours playing those mini games. I remember spending the most in the Mos Eisley Cantina with the Star Wars outfit, with the Stormtroopers, and it was a lot of fun hanging out over there. Unfortunately, they shut down the service in March 31st, 2015. All those memories gone.
Although... Dance attack! Dance attack!
To compete with Xbox Live Gold, Sony launched PS Plus in 2010 for the PS3, which initially allowed for bigger discounts in the store, free games monthly, and cloud storage with PS3, Vita, and PS4. The first free game was Wipeout HD, and if you stop paying for PS Plus, you will be able to lose access to the game. For PS3, they included trials to a certain amount of games they can try out before you can buy. Also, during the announcement blog, people were clamoring for cross-game chat, a feature that wouldn't come out for the PS4. And in PS4 launch, they made it mandatory to play online games. Video game consoles nowadays will have a special limited edition console or bundle. Sony has come to do the same, but they probably weren't the first. That could probably go to the Game Boy Tetris bundle, but Sony's first limited edition console that I could find will probably be the Net Yaros, which I'll talk about much later. They probably had the first gold console, which was made to celebrate the first 10 million consoles sold, but it wasn't playable. There were some Formula 1 limited edition consoles, a Men in Black console, and you can't forget about the PS1 Slim, which is probably the smallest console. And there's likely some that I'm forgetting since there's a lot. I think there was a turquoise clear console. For the PlayStation 2, there were various different colors. My favorite probably has to be the ocean blue clear console, as well as its controller. This generation had a lot of bundles with games and even movies. Of course, there is a gold PS2 for the Mobile Suit Z Gundam Type 100 Hayashiki Gold Pack, and there were also the PS2 Slim with its own variation colors. For the PlayStation 3 generation, there was also a lot of color variations, but some also had decals on them, such as probably my favorite, the Yakuza 3 console with the white and 2 dragons on them. There were also a lot of bundles with games and Blu-ray movies. During around 2009, I think, there was a gold 24-karat PlayStation 3 that retailed for $5,000. There was also other variations of the gold for Slim. Some limited editions were made as prizes, and some were made as devs to give as presents. PSP also had a lot of limited editions and bundles with movies as well, as there was a God of War bundle and a Star Wars bundle. And you can't forget about the gold either. And you can't forget about the PlayStation Vita variation. The most rare and expensive would be the Hatsune Miku model. I don't think there was ever a gold PS Vita. I know there are some gold like fake skins and cases, but I don't think there was ever a gold PS Vita. For PS4, you already know the deal. There's tons and tons of limited editions and bundles. My favorite would probably have to be the MGS5 console with the red and gold line with the Diamond Dog logos. I think that looks pretty cool. And also the Spider-Man one too. I think the best PlayStation 4 controller has to be the Death Stranding Baby controller with its clear and gold skin color. Speaking of gold, there is a gold Taco Bell console and also other gold consoles. There was also another cool one, which was the Hitman console that made it look like a briefcase. I think only one was made, by the way, I'm not sure. There was also the 20th anniversary console with the PS1 colors, with only a selected amount was raid. And for PS5, right now there's only a few bundles, there's no limited editions, but you can't remove the plates, and Sony has made some official plate colors, even though they're kind of expensive, but you can also get some unofficial ones too. And also I could mention the dev kits, which aren't limited editions per se, but they are limited to developers only. And also there is one rare limited PlayStation console, and that is the original Nintendo PlayStation, which was that original collaboration that they had before it fell out. Supposedly only 200 of those units were made, but there is one out there in the wild that has been documented. Now every brand out there has some kind of mascot to sell, and in 1995 Sony attempted to have their own mascot called the Polygon Man, which is a mascot to showcase the amount of polygons for the PlayStation 1, as polygons made up the 3D graphics. And he is stated to be even more powerful than God. Unfortunately, Ken Kutaragi rejected him, not because of how scary or whatever he looked, but because apparently he was not made with garbage shading opposed to flat shading, which is what they used. But in 1996, Naughty Dog had released Crash Bandicoot with Universal Studios and Sony releasing the game exclusive for the PS1. Also slightly before the game release, in E3 in 1996, Universal tried to take credit for creating Crash, and they actually denied Naughty Dog for attending E3. And Sony actually made Crash Bandicoot their front header instead of originally Twisted Metal. The game will go on to sell over 6 million copies worldwide. The game will go on to make Sony the household name that it is with Crash Bandicoot, and it will go on to make 3 other games with Crash Warped, Crash Cortex Back, and Crash Bash, as well as Crash Team Racing. And he was used a lot more in marketing. Even one time he even stepped out of Nintendo's office.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived. Pack up your stuff. I got a little surprise for you here. Check it out. What do you think about that? We got real-time, 3D, lush organic environments. How's that make you feel, buddy? Feel a little like your days are numbered? I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. You're hurting my elbow.
In 1998, there will also be another mascot with Universal and Insomniac this time creating the character Spyro the Dragon. Spyro's first game will go on to sell over 5 million units, and he will have other games with Spyro's Ripto's Rage and Spyro Year of the Dragon on the PlayStation 1. And these two were considered to be PlayStation's mascot, even though technically Sony didn't own them, it was Universal Studios. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, with Naughty Dog and Insomniac, they were hired on a contract, and when those contracts ended, they were no longer able to make those games. So during the PlayStation 2 generation, Universal Studios then decided to handle the franchise to other developers. And since Spyro and Crash were also released on other consoles, they were technically not part of the PlayStation mascot. But with the PS2 and GameCube of Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, it had pretty mixed to negative reviews, and there was also Crash Bandicoot Wrath of Cortex, which is a pretty good game actually, and that was released on the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. But Naughty Dog was not finished for the PlayStation 2 generation, as Sony had acquired them and released their first game together, Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy, which they would go on to make 3 other games, Jak 2, Jak 3, and Jak X Combat Racing. And Insomniac also kept making games exclusive for the PlayStation 2 with Ratchet and Clank series. Even though Insomniac was actually still an independent developer, Sony kept the license for Ratchet and Clank. Insomniac will go on to make 13 exclusive games for them, with 2 other Ratchet games being made by other developers. As well in the same generation, Sucker Punch approached Sony to release their new game Sly Cooper, and it was an instant success, releasing 2 other games in the Sly Cooper franchise. And these 3 franchises and characters would sort of become the mascot of the. And I think you could also mention Kratos from God of War as another mascot for mature audiences as well. And actually, these 3 characters, Ratchet, Sly, and Jak, Sony would actually make a game for them on the PlayStation 3 called PlayStation Move Heroes, which has these 3 characters, and I haven't heard anything good about it. So, and with the PS3, Naughty Dog to make Uncharted Drake's Fortune, which came out in 2007, and those other sequels, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3. And nothing really major happened with the PS4 generation, but on the PS5 we did have the Astrobots, which is probably the PS5 mascot. I mean, there is a free game on the PS5 installed, so I guess that could be the mascot of the PS5. But I kind of did lie. There is a PlayStation mascot in Japan though, and his name is Toro Inoue, which is a Sony cat, a white cat, and a black cat. And these cats also had their own game called Doko Demo Isio, and they have appeared throughout all consoles and systems, and even games as well. One I can remember is Street Fighter Cross Tekken. They actually had these 2 cats, you know, as fighters, so you can fight, you know, Ryu, Ken, I guess, as little cats. Between April 17 through April 19, 2011, hackers breached through data on the PlayStation Network, forcing Sony to shut off PSN on April 20th through May 4th, like 23 days, with 77 million accounts exposed with credit card information, addresses, phone numbers, names, and it also affected other Sony's online services. Anonymous is likely to blame, although they never came forward about it. The attack prevented users from accessing online games, and people got mad, like this guy.
I know one of you little cats done hacked into the PlayStation Network, man. I can't live without my Call of Duty, and I tell you what, please, man, unhack into it. Please bring it back online, dude. Please. I can't live without playing with my Call of Duty 4 online. I'm always on there shooting people, sniping people. I'm just out there getting buck wild, man. Just doing a darn thing.
Sony was blamed for not having password and credit card information encrypted like every other online web server should have. Several world governments would come to Sony to question them and also give them fines. They would change their terms and services and also beef up their security. To compensate users, they had the Welcome Back program with 33 days of PS Plus, 1 free year of identity theft protection, 1 free week of Hulu Plus, and 2 free PS3 games and PSP games. Only though a select amount of games and each territories are different. It will bring a great disservice to Sony Corporation, as they will lose 170 million just from the hack alone. and in 2011 they would lose $3 billion in total loss. But that wasn't the only time Sony PSN was hacked. In 2014, the Lizard Squad announced on Christmas Day that they would both shut down PSN and Xbox Live, and they actually did. They would also target H1Z1 and Planetite 2 servers in retaliation against John Smedley, the CEO of Sony Online Entertainment, as well as finding his airplane he was traveling to. After some threats, he would step down from CEO of Sony Online Entertainment. So the last official PS1 game was Strider Hiryu, a port of the arcade game by Capcom, releasing in 2006, around the time of the PS3 release. The last PS2 game is PES Soccer 2014, released in November 2013, also around when the PS4 was launching. The last PSP game that I could find is Retro City Rampage DX, released in 2016. The last PS Vita games are Russian Subway Dogs, Ultra Mission, Brotherhood United, Witchcrafty, and Mind Maze in August 27, 2021. The last PS3 game digitally was Shakedown Hawaii on August 20, 2020. But the last physical release in the PS3 is FIFA 19. Also, the PS1 has around 7,900 games in total. The PS2 had 4,000 games in total. And in theory, if you have the original PS3 fat model that can play PS2 games with the PS3 library of 2,500 games, you will have 4,400 games in total. 14,400.
Wow.
14,400.
I love you guys.
Africa, also known as Hakuna Matata in Asia, is a game that shows cutting-edge technology of the cell processor. And all you really do is just photograph animals in the safari. Similar to Pokemon Snap, it released in 2008 in Japan, but 2009 in North America. The game will go on to have pretty mixed reviews for being a pretty average photographing game. There's nothing else to do, really. The only notable thing about this game is the music by composer Wataru Hokoyama. He will go on to do, wait, am I reading this right? Holmes and Watson? Knack? Now, who owns Crash? It's not actually Sony, but it was, at the time, Universal Studios. They had a pretty lengthy history in gaming before the PS1, and they first started licensing their products into games in the 1980s. One infamous being the Atari 2600 with the game E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which caused the 1983 video game crash in the United States that basically killed gaming as a industry as a whole. And it wasn't actually the E.T. game's fault. It was mostly just an overflow of like garbage games that companies would just keep making to turn a profit. But in 1993, 1994, Universal would contract with Naughty Dog to make Way of the Warrior in the 3DO. And Universal had been publishing games on the 3DO and other devices as well. During the same time, they would found the Universal Studios Interactive Productions. And of course, Naughty Dog will make Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation 1, and they will also contract Insomniac to create Spyro the Dragon. Universal will also publish other games during the PS2 generation, but it wasn't until early 2001 that they were merged with Vivendi Games. And Vivendi is an entirely different conglomerate of a company, and they own these two licenses until July 10, 2008, when they will merge with Activision, creating Activision Blizzard. Because before then, Vivendi actually owns Blizzard. Activision's first Crash game is Crash Mind Over Mutant, and their first Spyro game is Dawn of the Dragon. Weirdly enough, the Spyro Dawn of the Dragon, Vivendi still published the game outside of the US. Activision won't own these characters until sometime next year when Microsoft will complete their acquisition of Activision for $68 billion. And it's kind of done a unfortunate like 180, 360 for Sony when their main competitor now owns what used to be their own mascot. Crash would have at least 16 developers for almost 30 years, and Spyro having 12 developers for 25 years. Sony Online Entertainment was founded in December 1997 under SCE in San Diego, with John Smedley as founder and CEO. They will publish and develop mostly PC online games such as EverQuest, Star Wars Galaxies, The Matrix Online, PlanetSide. They would even help develop God of War Betrayal, a Java game on mobile phones that supported it, as also some online PS2 and PS3 games. And as well, the PSN hack affected them and affecting around like 20 million users with their informations leaked. In February 2nd, 2015, Sony will sell SOE to Columbus Nova for an undisclosed amount, and they will rename themselves as Daybreak the Game Company. When Sony used the CD-ROM technology on their console, it could store more data and was a lot cheaper compared to cartridges. It was more valuable for devs as well. But Sony didn't have any copy protection, as people have CD burners. People could copy entire games on a burner CD and play them as well, not having paying any licenses. Sony had the wobble groove mechanic that would sort of like move and would be a way for detecting any piracy and licenses. But that feature would soon be derailed, as people could easily swap a licensed game with a copied game, Indiana Jones style. And PS1 games had the black coating on the back, which was something for piracy measures, but it was just a lot of baloney. There will also be mod chips as well, and there was also an I/O port, which was not really used for anything. Sony didn't use it and other companies didn't use it, but a lot of hackers and mod chips users could be able to use it and just play whatever game they wanted without even paying for real discs. Some games did have anti-pirate measures baked in that would detect that it is being a copied disc and wouldn't allow the users to continue playing after a certain amount of time. The PSP was also easily hackable since June 15, 2005. It was easy to copy UMD to the SD card, as well as having homebrew and emulating games. Even though technically the PSP sold over 80 million units, a lot higher than other handheld systems that isn't Nintendo, most of those users that were aware of the homebrew and emulating scene did not buy actual games for it, which isn't really good for Sony and developers, since that's how they make their money. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale is Sony's response to Super Smash Bros. From Nintendo. PlayStation's All-Star Battle Royale was developed by Superbot Entertainment, their only game, and they lied about making another game, but that never released, and the team went MIA. Pretty weird, since Sony founded this team and abandoned them to let them rot away and die a miserable death. Oh yeah, about PlayStation's All-Star Battle Royale. They originally wanted Naughty Dog to make the game, but they were too busy, so they made Superbot Entertainment. The project started in 2009, and in 2011 the game was leaked, showing all types of PlayStation characters fighting each other. And it was also one of the first cross-buy games, meaning if you bought a PS3 copy of PlayStation Battle Royale All-Stars, you would get a PS Vita copy for free. It released on November 20th, 2012 to mixed reviews with a lack of content, and they're now just being depth to the fighting game engine. IGN gave a very generous 8 out of 10 review. The server shut down in January 31st, 2019, and Polygon Man is actually the final boss of the game. PlayStation Move, another response to Nintendo. Sony made a motion game control released on September 15, 2010. It functions similar to the Wii Remote. It uses the camera to track the motion controls, and the first game for it is Sports Champions, released the day after. There will be different attachments, such as the gun attachment for games to use in Killzone 3 and SOCOM 4. And there was quite a lot of move-only games, but there are also some games that have an additional option to use move controls. PS Move will have support up until 2014, when there wasn't really any new move games for it, since it was mostly a PS3 accessory and it wasn't compatible with PS4 until the PSVR came out, which actually used the same PS Move controls. And since it is the same exact PS3 move control for VR, they still release new versions of the VR move controls to this day, and they're not really compatible with PS3 move for some reason. What if I told you there was a game so evil, so corrupt, it claimed the lives of countless individuals? Yes, of course I'm talking about Stuart Little 2, the video game. Released by Sony, it was so infamous. PSX Nation called it better than Lilo and Stitch and gave it a 76 out of 100, which isn't really good compared to Bubsy 3D, which PSX Extreme gave it their Golden X Award at a 93%. Good one, Sony. Also, on the other hand, wait, what? What? Oh, right now, but I'm. Oh. Okay, I guess. So we have a report, special breaking news from A1 Nancy Scott.
This is Nancy Scott reporting. Oh my gosh, did you see that? Once again, Scum Labs have been unable to contain their genetic experiments. Military forces have yet to mobilize, and this report has reason to fear for her life. Public beware, get inside, lock your doors, your windows, and for goodness sake...
Thank you for that report, Nancy. Heaven help us. They're on a rampage!
Net Yaros, released in 1996 in Japan and elsewhere in 1997, is a development kit for the public. The name means let's do it together. Priced around $750, it allows people to make their own games using the PlayStation 1. Though it wasn't the first of its kind of a console development kit for the public, that would be the ZX Spectrum, but it allowed a taste of what game development is from creating small communities. And the kit was only available via mail order, so you would have to send Sony your information, but there are some people who actually got it for free from Sony themselves, and they will also help those developers who have some troubles developing for the kit. As because the console is only limited compared to the PS1, they would release their games via demos on the official PlayStation magazines, and there are a total of 96 games, from racing games to horror games, action adventure, etc. One being the famous Final Fantasy VII game. No, not that Final Fantasy VII. This one, which is more of a tech demo that replicates the graphics. It was made by Mitsuru Kamiyama, who will actually go on to work for Square Enix directing Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Disc version 3.0 is one of the discs required to use the PlayStation 2 for online connection. Although there are some games that have the software built in, there are different versions for different network configurations. And I think some are included in the box when you buy it, because that's how I have this version 3, even though I didn't really know what to do with it and I never really connected to the network. But Sony at the time didn't have a unified online service like Xbox Live or Sega Net during those times, but they were depending on third-party publishers' servers. The last official PlayStation 2 server was Final Fantasy XI, which shut down on March 31st, 2016. But there are still fan-created servers that could be going on DNS servers. PlayStation Underground was the magazine counterpart from the official PlayStation magazine. Included demo discs, which also a vault of demos, a code book for cheats, hints and strategy guides, and imports from other territories. Download stations, which will add content and save data. Tech Q&As, video interviews, and event centers will show PlayStation promotions and events.
Call 1-800-983-SONY. Get 4 issues, 8 CDs for only $29.95. Get it today.
The final issue was in 2001. Although it was staying dormant, it would sometimes pop up from time to time. Jam Pack is also another sub-series under the PlayStation Underground, and this time they will mostly do a series of demo discs throughout the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2.
Lower your weapon or be destroyed.
Emotion Engine is the name given to the CPU of the PlayStation 2, manufactured by Sony and Toshiba. It would also be included in early PS3 models. It was a pretty big leap in technology, as the CPU had a speed of around 299 MHz compared to the PS1, which only had 33 MHz. And there's like more RAM, I think like 16K and other megabits and whatnot, but it was a lot harder to develop for in comparison to the PS1. One famous example being Shinji Mikami being kind of angry with the PS2 for some reason, and him leaving Capcom shortly after the release of Resident Evil 4, which was a GameCube exclusive at first. The PlayStation 2 is a lot weaker compared to the GameCube and other consoles at the time, as even the GameCube CPU processor is 285 compared to a lot weaker PS2 295, but it still sold the most consoles out of the entire video game industry. GoCam is a PSP camera, also called Choto shot in Japan. The first version, PSP 3000E, is a 1.3 megapixel camera, shooting pictures at 1280 by 960 and video at 480 by 272. There was another cheaper and lower spec version, the PSP 450X, shooting at 0.3 megapixels. It was also bundled with a game called Invisimals, sort of a Pokemon clone type, and it was an AR game basically. There will also be an editing software called Go Edit, where you can edit pictures and videos. iToy, released in 2003 with a 320 by 480 pixels, created by Richard Marx in 1999. It was manufactured by Logitech. Marx will also develop the PS Move and PSVR. It was more than a webcam. It can also do computer vision and gesture recognition on the fly. There's also a built-in mic, and it uses USB 1.1. There are 25 games designed specifically for the iToy, and there are 64 games that are enhanced with iToy. The iToy sold around 10 million units worldwide. It can also be used in the PlayStation 3 with the webcam. The last official iToy game supported is MLB 11, The Show, released in March 2011 for the PlayStation 3. The PS2 has an internal clock to keep the time for games, saving the memory cards, and the system altogether. It contains flying orbs and hexagon rods for a 12-hour clock. You can access it without using a disc in the system. And all the orbs and rotating rods actually represent some mathematical elements with seconds, minutes, and hours. Sony would actually patent this design, US 6693606B1, in 1999 or around 2000. Created by Takamasa Shichisawa and Hajime Sugiyama, the latter actually works on some games: Sega Rally 2, Ico, Shadow Colossus, Last Guardian, and probably the PS5 architecture. Some games use the clock uniquely. For example, the first 3 Ratchet & Clank games actually had in-game museums you can access from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. Real late in the night, huh? Or you can just change your clock and you can access it anytime. As well as Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, the end boss fight, where instead of killing him normally, you can wait an entire week. Or you can just change the clock and he'll die of old age. I think this might also be a reference to, in the end boss fight, Kojima originally wanted to have the boss fight to last 2 whole weeks, which would be really impossible to make. Region lock is a practice of preventing users from accessing content outside of certain regions due to legal reasons, localizations, or something to do with like TV hertz and watts, and other whatnots, like PAL regions running slower than, for example, NTSC games. Nintendo was the first to practice region locking games with the original Nintendo Entertainment System. PS1 and PS2 are region locked with 3 different regions: NTSC, UC, NTSC Japan, and PAL region. But they can also be overcome with mod chips as well. The PlayStation 3 is region free, as any console can play any games, except 2, Persona 4 Arena and Way of the Samurai 3, for some weird reason, I guess. The PSP is region free, but UMD movies are limited, and PS Vita, PS4, and PS5 are completely region free. PlayStation Classic. It responds to Nintendo's NES Classic and SNES Classic and emulates the PS1 games released on December 3rd, 2018, priced at $9.99. Shipped with 2 original PS1 controls, an HDMI cable, and a USB cable. It's 80% smaller than the original, and it actually runs on the PCSX emulator. There are 20 games preloaded, with some using a PAL regions, which are much slower than the NTSC games. Also, each region has their own different games. It was criticized for having a small library, being more expensive to the competitors, which were $5.99 and $79.99. The first 500,000 units of the PlayStation 3 came bundled with the Blu-ray movie Talladega Nights instead of, an actual game. Something like Wii Sports. And obviously, they will be ridiculed online for not having bundled in any games. And also feed into the meme that PlayStation 3 has no games. And Ricky Bobby became the unofficial mascot for the PS3.
What's up, bitches?
Chad Warden, created by Anthony Pinto, is the official PlayStation 3 hype man, creating his first video on YouTube, named Why PS3 is Better Than the Wii and 360, being one of YouTube's earliest trolls. And people actually thought that he was created by Sony as some marketing team, popularizing the PS Triple. On May 5th, 2008, Chad Warden closed his account for unknown reasons, but there are still mirrors and parodies of him.
Alright, niggas trying to say, you know what? Let's look at the Wii's games right now, alright? What we got? We got Super Mario Galaxy. Shit. We got this nigga, this Mexican ass nigga that just jumped over the fucking border, running around and fixing people's toilets. Alright. I don't know about you, but that shit ain't baller. Alright. Talk about Halo.
about Halo 3. You know what I'm saying? Man, they best rename that shit to Galo 3. Shit, that shit is mad gay. True niggas don't play that game. You know who play that shit? Gay niggas. Gay niggas. Sony always wins, baby. Sony always wins. You can't beat Sony. Shit, that shit is slick. Slick. That shit. Have you seen the PS3? That shit is nice, slick, black. That shit is nice. See like my hair over here, bitch?
Gabe Newell, co-founder of Valve, called out Sony for the PS3's architecture, quote, calling it a waste of everybody's time. There's nothing there that you're going to apply to anything else. You're not going to gain anything except a hatred of the architecture they have created. Because of his hatred for the PS3, they let EA port the Orange Box game to the PS3 instead of Valve, who ported the Xbox 360 version of the Orange Box in 2007. But surprise, surprise, he showed up in Sony's E3 2010 press conference.
Everyone at Sony for their gracious hospitality and for not repeatedly punching me in the face. If I seem a little nervous, it's because Kevin Butler was introduced to me backstage as the VP of sharpening things. As an industry, we're going through a transition from entertainment as a product to entertainment as a service.
PS2 memory card menus features 3D or 2D models unique to each game, some more animated than others. PS1 save game data also works here and displayed in their unique icon as in the original PlayStation, as well as you can launch games and DVDs in the menu as well. Captain Blasto is a 3D platformer third-person shooter where you play as Captain Blasto, portrayed by comedian Phil Hartman, who unfortunately would pass away 6 weeks after the release of the game. Developed and published by Sony on April 16, 1998, it was in development since 1995. It used some interesting technologies. There are very little load times, vertex lighting, and they use custom game tools. The game received mostly mixed reviews, not bad, but not good either. They planned a Japanese release, but was cancelled for some unknown reasons. The music is composed by Chuck Dude, who would also work on a number of other Sony projects, his most recent being Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart in 2021 on the PS5. Also, Is It Me or the Captain Quark from the Ratchet games took inspiration from Blasto, where in the original concept art he's wearing red, and they changed it to green to avoid confusion from Blasto's blazing popularity. The PlayStation 2 can apparently handle real-time ray tracing. A video from the 2002 SCE Assembly Seminar showcasing the real-time PlayStation 2 tech demos. The CPU wasn't even used at all, but some vector unit operations utilizing 16 kilobits of memory.
Is entering the sphere. It's real-time ray tracing here.
I have epilepsy.
Real-time ray tracer again. It's quite nice.
Steve Race was Sony's Computer Entertainment North America's first CEO during the PlayStation project. He would announce the price and would also lead the launch of the PlayStation 1 in North America. He would abruptly leave the company 1 month before the launch. And it actually isn't uncommon for him to go from company to company with the board of directors and whatnot. As he previously worked on Atari and Sega, his only game credits are Top Gun Fire at Will in 1996 and Falcon 4.0 in 1998, both Air Pilot games. Olafur Johan Olafsson joined Sony in 1985 and in 1991 helped founded the Sony Computer Entertainment Incorporated, becoming the first president and CEO. SCE was more independent to the Sony Corporation. He would manage the North American and European branch, as well as worldwide operations and the launch of the PlayStation. He will argue for low prices and will clash with other higher-ups executives, which would force him to resign in 1996. He would go to different companies from Advanta, Time Warner, and AOL, and he would also become an author of several books. His first game credit is Chuck Rock in 1991, and his last is Johnny Mnemonic in 1995. Bleem was one of the PS1 emulators for IBM-compatible PCs, released in March 1999, published by the Bleem Company, similar to KinectMech's Virtual Game Station, where you can also play PS1 games on PCs. The VGS allowed users to play on Mac machines. Even Steve Jobs noted this.
Have the best game machine in the world. Now, this is another game machine. It's the most popular game machine in the world. Wouldn't it be great if we could play some of those titles too? Well, at Macworld today, Connectix is introducing the Virtual Game Station. It is software. It is software that they're going to sell for $49 that turns your Mac into a Sony PlayStation. It plays a few hundred.
Sony, of course, sued Connectix but lost, so Sony bought VGS. Bleem will be heavily marketed for compared to other emulators, and they announced that they can have the Dreamcast emulate PS1 games.
There would be lawsuits up the ass.
Bleemcast would upscale PS1 graphics and a higher resolution compared to the original. Sony, of course, would shoot multiple lawsuits to the Bleem Company and lost every one of them. Although the Bleemcast can only play 3 games: Gran Turismo 2, Tekken 3, and Metal Gear Solid. Bleem could not handle all of the legal fees for such a small company, and it was shut down in November 2001. At the same time, the Dreamcast will be continued in North America. They will close the website, only showing a picture of Sonic with the Bleem logo, though they had to remove Sonic due to legal fears. Sean Capin, one of the creators of Bleem, will go on to work for Sony Online Entertainment. The yellow light of death refers to the motherboard capacitors failing due to overheating, and you'll see that the front of the PS3 turns to yellow, regarding a failed motherboard connector. And it's more common in launch PS3s because they were manufactured a lot quicker to meet demand, and they will just overheat and die. It affects the units CHEH20XXA and B units, and obviously those will be overcome with when they will better manage the hardware. The issue isn't quite as huge compared to the Xbox 360's failure rate, which is 50% of all consoles, while the PS3 is usually around 14%. For a while, Sony didn't allow crossplay for other games on other platforms, such as Rocket League and Fortnite, but they still allow crossplay for certain PC games. But around 2019, they finally allowed it. During the Apple vs. Epic Games legal battle, it was revealed that they thought it was an experience that they wouldn't add to anything to PlayStation. Epic would try to beg Sony in any way to allow crossplay. They came to the agreement on royalties and fees, where otherwise they would miss revenue. It's unknown whether the system is still in place, but they're the only company that requires for compensation for crossplay. For example, if they play on PlayStation but pay elsewhere, they will have to be compensated.
Are you ready, true believers? Capcom and Marvel have joined forces once again to bring you in Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter! Don't miss out on the enjoyment of a lifetime! Don't miss the most amazing tag team fighting game ever! Are you ready for a new challenger? Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter! Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter!
Interactive for a Common Engine, also known for short the ICE team, is a secret team inside Naughty Dog Studios. They don't necessarily design games, but they develop tools and the engines used in Sony's first-party developers. Headed by Mark Cerny, and Shuhei Yoshida is in charge of scouting for new talent and developers. PSX can mean three things: the code name for the original PlayStation. Second, the digital video recorder is basically a PlayStation 2 that is also a VCR, only in Japan, costing around $600. It was the first to use the XMB UI. And third, the PlayStation Experience, SCE's own expo showcasing games, demos, and whatnot. Starting in 2002 in England and in 2003, it wouldn't return until 2014 in Las Vegas to celebrate the 20th anniversary of PlayStation, and through 2017. In Malaysia, they held the first Asian Expo in 2018 and has been dormant since then. Over the years, there has been many developers that are gone under Sony, which are Zipper Interactive, which made the Solcon games, and MAG, Studio Liverpool, who made the Wipeout games and was also the first developer Sony bought when they were Psygnosis, Manchester Studios, which were supposed to make a VR game, but their first game was cancelled and didn't get to release anything, and along with the developer. Incognito Entertainment, who made some of the Twisted Metal games, Warhawk, and War of the Monsters. Gorilla Cambridge, who will make Medieval, Primal, and Little Big Planet on the PSP. And they also collab with Evolution Studios, who made Motorstorm and Drive Club, the first PS4 game shown. And also Evolution Studios will get shut down too, along with Big Studios, another game developer under Evolution Studios. 989 Studios, who were Sony's first studio that they made, and they made quite a lot of games actually, but they ended up making sports games before they closed down. And unfortunately, the most sad of them all were probably Japan Studios, which was Sony's first Japanese branch game studio, and they made some great projects like Ape Escape, Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, Siren, Gravity Rush, and they also collaborate with other developers with Bloodborne and Demon Souls, like from Software. LSD Dream Emulator is a game conceived by Osamu Sato, developed by Asmic Ace Entertainment for the PlayStation 1, only released in Japan on October 22, 1998, and is played in a first-person view perspective where you travel surreal environments and touching them to initiate other dream sequences. And it has no real objectives, just moving from dream to dream on following this graph. And I think the reason why there's no objective is because Sato, the guy who conceived it, was not really a good gamer. Like he couldn't like finish objectives and whatnot, so he kind of conceived the game where it's accessible to everyone and it's more of an artsy music kind of game. And a lot of dreams on the game is based on dream diaries from an Asmic Ace employee. This wasn't Sato's first game actually. His first project is Easter Mines, The Lost Souls of Tong No in 1994, funded and sold by Sony Music for PC and Mac. Sato will create music from the game from samples, and there are over 500 unique music patterns that can be in the game. The game didn't sell well, but it did have a cult following. It was re-released on the Japanese PlayStation Store on August 11, 2010. Also, when the game came out, it could bundle with a CD and booklet. Sato also wanted to release the game on the American PlayStation Store, translated of course, but was rejected since the PlayStation Classics program needed the original untouched game to be released in the program. Spawn the Eternal is a pretty bad single-player action-adventure game from Sony Interactive Studios, also known as 989 Studios. Released on December 1st, 1997 for the original PlayStation. It's a pretty repetitive game with little to no story, Every enemy interaction turns into a crappy Tekken Virtual Fighter game ripoff. It has pretty wonky controls, like no challenge whatsoever. Some of the ugliest graphics I've ever seen, and apparently uses motion capture as well. It started development in 1995 and was supposed to release when the movie would come out, but it got delayed. The only good thing I can say about this game is the music and atmosphere, as it's pretty spooky actually. And also, if you put the game on a CD player, you could listen to an interview with Todd McFarlane. Cell processor is the name given to the CPU of the microchip. It was developed by Sony, Toshiba, and IBM starting in 2001, costing over $400 million. It was made to solve complex algorithms and also to be used in supercomputers. It's pretty hard to explain, but the CPU processor on the cell is 3.2 gigahertz, which is way more powerful than the Emotion Engine's 299 megahertz. And it was really power hungry, as the original fat models PS3s had used 380 watts of power. It was notoriously hard to develop for, since it mimicked more of what multi-threading on CPUs would have nowadays. But back then it was sort of a new tech that developers had a hard time developing for. And that's why a lot of third-party games on the PlayStation 3 suffered a lot in frame rate and resolutions, as they couldn't harness the power of the cell since it was too difficult for them, and also they wanted to make the game available for PC and Xbox 360. But despite the PS3 first using the cell in 2006, a guerrilla developer stated in 2019 that Cell was more powerful than the PS4 and recent Intel CPUs, which is really crazy to think about. And Sony wasn't the only one to use the Cell. Toshiba used the Cell to create the most powerful television, the Cell Rexa 55X1, an LCD 55-inch, 240Hz refresh rate, 5 million to 1 contrast ratio, 4K resolution, 3 terabytes of storage, an LED backlight, 7-speaker soundbar, DLNA support, and it can display 8 HD channels at the same time and recording them with 26 hours of playtime, as well as 3D technology. All of this tech around 2008, 2009, and it retailed for $11,115. And I also heard somewhere that it can also display 8K video too, which is really insane for the time, as a cell processor can upscale resolutions. And this is something now TVs are just starting to do. Toshiba also used some real 3D tracking, which is pretty impressive. IBM also used a cell for some supercomputers, the IBM Roadrunner, sustaining 1.026 petaflops, using 2.35 megawatts of power, taking up to 6,000 square feet, 103.6 terabytes of RAM, 1 million terabytes of storage, and it was costing over $100 million at the time at the Los Alamos laboratory, designing and simulating nuclear weapons as long as other scientific and aerospace uses. Peter Dill first became part of PlayStation around 1994 as Senior Director of Product Marketing of Sony Computer Entertainment America and the launch of the PlayStation, overseeing all marketing of PS1 and its games, as well as Sony Interactive Electronics division. He will leave around 1999 to join THQ as Senior Vice President of Worldwide Marketing. He would return back to Sony in 2006, but would leave again in 2012. He would have 182 games credit to him. His first game credit is Hook in 1992, or Chuck Rock. His last game credit is Loco Roco Remastered in 2017. Now, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of cancelled games. We can go on and on about these cancelled games, but I'm gonna go through some that I find interesting, some first-party games that were canceled, some third-party games, and I'll also mention some prototypes and betas along the way. Mars Adventure is a canceled flying shooting game created by Sony to be their first in-house project in 1994 through 1995. The team didn't receive up-to-date dev kits and couldn't finish in time. Pest is a cancelled action game created by Rocket Science Games from 1996 to 1997 for the original PlayStation, where you would stop rats by attacking them directly or setting up traps. The team also had a number of cancelled games, and they shut down in 1997. The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, planned for 1998 by Bandai for the PlayStation, based on the novel of the same name. It was similar to a visual novel game where you were interacting with students. The scenario was written by Hiroshi Yamaguchi, and it was cancelled for unknown reasons. Vibrant Red Sector is a cancelled sci-fi shooter by New World Computing for the PlayStation 1, where you are a squad of robot fighters killing a race of synthetic humanoids. Set in open areas to explore and complete different objectives, the 3DO company bought New World developer team and cancelled the project. There were a number of ports that were cancelled for PlayStation 1, such as Daikatana, Superman, Messiah, and I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Glover 2, a sequel of the original Glover game, developed by Interactive Studios and published by Hasbro. The game was near complete until Hasbro accidentally ordered 150,000 Nintendo 64 cartridges, and retailers were not willing to sell them, so Hasbro would have to cancel Glover 2 due to financial ruin and a bad reputation. Beneath, a cancelled game from Presto Studios for PlayStation 1 and PC, was presented as the Tomb Raider killer, advertised as deeper than any tomb, more dangerous than any woman, where you will explore uncharted civilizations. Pressure was more ambitious than they realized, and they unfortunately had to cancel the game, and in 2002 the studio was closed. Dark Guns, a console shooter action game from 1997 to 1998 by 989 Studios, headed by David Jaffe for the PlayStation 1, a run-and-gun shooter turned to an alien abduction game destroying cities. It was cancelled due to development and management issues. Kin was the original idea of a first-person shooter for the PS1 by Guerrilla Games in 1999. Sony saw the demo and was impressed that they wanted them to develop it for the PlayStation 2. It was called Lost Boys before transforming into Killzone, released in 2004. Virus, another early Sony in-house game. It was a survival horror game where you fight alien viruses that infects people and military machines into spider-like creatures. It was planned for the PlayStation, but was cancelled for unknown reasons. Marvel 2999, One Nation Under Doom, was a cancelled PlayStation 1 game by Mindscope, where you play as 2099 equivalent Marvel characters, such as Punisher and Spider-Man. Shown in E3 in 1996, the developers suffered layoffs and financial troubles, and production stopped, but never officially cancelled. City of the Dead is a cancelled first-person shooter game based on George Romero's movies, announced on 2004 and a 2006 release on PlayStation 2 and Xbox. The game was cancelled since Hip Interactive, the publisher, went bankrupt in 2005. Invasion, an MMO shooter developed by Turbine Incorporated, where you explore a Martian colony and preventing an attack on Earth. It was planned for 2003, but the team was inexperienced for making an MMO for the PlayStation 2 and was shortly cancelled. Jurassic Park Survival is a third-person action-adventure game developed by Savage Entertainment and published by Universal Interactive and Konami for the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PC. Inspired by Jurassic Park 3 movie, where you investigate the island, escape armed security, as well as dinosaurs. Universal couldn't agree on a budget and was cancelled before its 2002 release. Dinosaur Zoo, a prototype made by Dogfish Entertainment, which established in 2000, started for a Jurassic Park type simulator. In 2001, Sony greenlit the project, as well as another game of theirs, Horrorville. But when Dogfish saw an official Jurassic Park simulator called Operation Genesis, they thought they couldn't compete, and in 2002 Sony cut ties with them, along with their other game. Dogfish Entertainment would never release the game and they were closed down. Mad Sticks, a game conceived by Koichi Yotsu and Takahiro Ando for the PlayStation 2. It was described as a cinematic racing puzzle game where there is no steering wheel, accelerator, or brakes, just you on a course, avoiding being crashed in high speeds and controlling the camera. It was never officially announced and the developer's soul went under. Taxi Driver, a game based on the 1976 movie of the same name, planned for a 2006 release, developed by Papaya Studios for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, with Majesco as publisher. The game is a direct sequel to the movie, described as Grand Theft Auto without the police chase, with Robert De Niro voicing his character again, but Martin Scorsese was unhappy it was being made. Even though he had no real power to directly cancel the game, he said he'll make sure they never have a licensed title in Hollywood again. Since the publisher Majesco focused on licensed product, they had to cancel the game. The developers Papaya would sue Majesco in 2005 for breach of contract due to the sudden cancellation of Taxi Driver. They would settle in 2007, but Papaya would close in 2013. Fall Artificer is a cancelled action-adventure steampunk game developed by Psygnosis Camden, who would later merge with SCE London Studios. For the PlayStation 2, the project will be scrapped when they saw Gurley Cambridge's Primal game and decided to make another game, Dropship United Peace Force. Monster Knight is a cancelled game from Insomniac starting in 1999 for the PlayStation 2. Though it was never announced, it was a Pokemon-esque game where you would explore a large world, capturing creatures for attacking, negotiations, for equipment, transportation. Every creature will be unique, and they would later scrap the idea to work on Ratchet & Clank. The Retriever, also known as Jet Li's Retriever, was a cancelled third-person action beat-em-up game for the PlayStation 2 and PSP, starting development in 2005 at Sony. It was cancelled for unknown reasons, as was another Jet Li game, Rise to Honor 2. There would have been a Far Cry game for the PlayStation Portable, developed around 2006, but it was never announced and shortly cancelled. In E3 2009, Sony announced Resident Evil Portable, a game for the PSP, though there was no new information after it and it was quietly cancelled. Though it is rumored that the game was transformed into Resident Evil Revelations for the 3DS. Ushido is a cancelled horror-themed RPG developed by Level 5 for the PSP, where you will make a deal with dying people and having a single wish exchanged for their lives, where you can possess people to fight evil. There was no new information after the announcement, as they went to focus on mobile games, and as well as the Yokai Watch games. Room is a cancelled social networking experience similar to PlayStation Home, but on the PSP. Developed by Japan Studio, and it was announced in TGS 2009. It was only available in closed beta through April 15, 2010. Due to feedback, they cancelled the service. Elder Scrolls Oblivion is a cancelled port of the game of the same name for the PSP, and with a much linear story game compared to the open world on consoles and PC. It was being developed by Climax Group in 2005-2006, and it would have had some unique content for it, and it was to be released in 2007, but due to technical challenges and a tight deadline, as well as a small budget, it was ultimately cancelled, but there is a playable version of it, though it's not finished. Heartland, or also Homeland, is a cancelled PSP game developed by Incognito Entertainment, spearheaded by David Jaffe, as a mature shooter about the consequences of war with political themes close to the George Bush administration, with a strong setting and events caused by the player. With difficult morally gray decisions, with North America being invaded by the Chinese, it was being worked on for months until most of the team moved to other games and was cancelled for little resources. Saints Row Undercover, or also The Fall, is a cancelled 2008-2009 game, open world Saints Row game. They wanted the game to be set between the first and second game, but they opted for a sequel to the second game, and as an expansion, where you play as an undercover cop investigating rival gangs. It was being developed by Savage Entertainment, but when Volition, the main Saints Row developers, reviewed it, it was not up to par and was cancelled. but years later it was undercovered after being hidden away and was shown to the public available to play, and you can actually download it too. LMNO is a console game developed by Arcane Studios and published by EA for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. It would have an FPS action-adventure parkour game with RPG elements, while being in a relationship with an alien named Eve, who you rescue from a government lab. Steven Spielberg was involved and wanted no gunplay, but puzzle solving. The team suffered layoffs and was cancelled in 2009 to 2010. 8 Days is a cancelled action game developed by Sony's London studio for the PlayStation 3. First shown as a tech demo in E3 2005, it had a full review in E3 2006. The game would be set in 8 days in 8 different states, where you get revenge on a mob syndicate with 2 playable characters. The team was 120 strong, but the E3 2006 footage was not actual in-game footage, but mostly CG as to generate some hype. You can see this because in the gameplay they had a fake HUD to give an illusion of gameplay. The game didn't have development troubles, but Sony felt they needed more online games, and 8 Days didn't have any online functionality. In October 2009, it was been on hold ever since. Turok 2 was a cancelled FPS action game from Propaganda Games and published by Disney for the PS3 and Xbox 360. It would have been a sequel to the 2008 reboot Turok game, where you would fight off dinosaurs in a desert planet featuring riding on dinosaurs. Propaganda were facing layoffs and was cancelled. Simeon is a cancelled prototype from Sony Cambridge for the PlayStation 3. Work started in 2004. It would have utilized the PSI camera to communicate with alien monkeys on an alien jungle planet. It was cancelled early on due to being too ambitious for the technology, but some of the game assets will be reworked into the iPad game. Zodiac Assassin was a scrap concept by Sony Cambridge for the PlayStation 3. Started in 2005 and would have been a globe-trotting Kill Bill type assassin game set in Mexico, Turkey, and Japan with a female-led character. Development didn't get far as Sony was more interested in Ninja Theory's Heavenly Sword. In 2011, Sony Cambridge worked on an untitled PS3 sci-fi game where you would control an astronaut's movement with the PS Move controller. It didn't enter full production for unknown reasons. Prince of Persia Assassins was supposed to be the next entry of the Prince of Persia games for the PS3 and Xbox 360, where you would assassinate the prince's enemies and protect them. But sometime later they decided to focus on assassinating parts and create a whole new series. Before Uncharted, Naughty Dog toyed the idea of a sci-fi game for the PlayStation 3, exploring a city around a giant hole set in the year 2186, though they ended up making Uncharted instead. But Naughty Dog might still go with the idea, as a fictional comic series in The Last of Us is teased. Revolution was a cancelled prototype by Sony Cambridge in 2006 for the PlayStation 3, an FPS at war with aliens set in the UK, but was scrapped when they found out Insomniac was underway of a similar game, Resistance. Tomb Raider Ascension was the original plan for the Tomb Raider reboot in 2013 for the PS3 and Xbox. It was more of a horror-themed supernatural apocalyptic world with Laura having a child companion. It was leaked in 2009 and fans expressed an outcry. Insane is a cancelled survival horror game from Volition in collaboration with Guillermo del Toro for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC. Development started in 2010. It was supposed to be a trilogy of games, but in 2012, the game was cancelled for unknown reasons and the rights reverted back to Guillermo. We wouldn't even know what the game would be about, all we have are just some monster concepts. Dancing Eyes HD is a cancelled remake of the arcade game Dancing Eyes in 1996 from Namco, where you play as a monkey trying to cut off pieces of clothing from girls. Similar in gameplay to Kicks, it would have been a PS3 exclusive using the PS Move controllers, but cancelled for unknown reasons. Survive is a cancelled zombie game developed by Big Studios starting around 2009, but not much is known about the game and there was never an official announcement, and it was cancelled since Sony closed Big Studios in 2012. Now, I'm not sure if this is a canceled game or just some like hobby concept, whatever. But a Naughty Dog designer who designed some of the characters in The Last of Us designed Walter White in 3D. I'm sure doesn't mean anything since it's just a concept, but it is kind of weird to think that, you know, if Sony does own the Breaking Bad IP and they own Naughty Dog, they could just, you know, make a game kind of like easily if they wanted to. But it's just concepts, and there are different models of Walter White in 3D. It's interesting to think about. Horror of the Orient is a canceled action-adventure game for the PS4, PC, and Xbox One from KMM Interactive, a subsidiary of an Australian film production. From former employees of the defunct Team Bondi, the developers who did LA Noire. It would have taken place in 1936 Shanghai, with a crime syndicate, political turmoil, and the Kuomintang trying to stop the communists. Development started in late 2011 to 2012, targeting a 2015 release, with Warner Brothers interested in publishing it, but they will pull out in late 2012 and was cancelled around 2013. Tekken Cross Street Fighter is a cancelled fighting game with Bandai Namco and Capcom, announced in San Diego Comic-Con, along with Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Tekken Cross will be Namco's 3D fighting game, while Capcom Street Fighter Cross will be a 2D fighter, planned for PS3 and Xbox 360, but later for PS4 and Xbox One. But after the announcement, there was no new updates, while Street Fighter Cross Tekken will be released in 2012. It's unknown why or how development was slow, but Akuma and most development animations and gameplay transferred to Tekken 7, and Tekken Cross would be cancelled. Deep Down is an unreleased action role-playing game developed and published by Capcom for the PlayStation 4, and it was announced in the PS4 reveal. You and/or 3 others will explore dungeons in a medieval fantasy setting, with Yoshinori Ano as producer, who previously produced the Street Fighter games. As well as showing there was a new game engine, Phanta Ray. There was nothing else shown to the public in years. In 2019, Ano stated it's still in development, but he will leave Capcom in 2020. Capcom hasn't revealed if it's being cancelled or is it still in development. Wild is a cancelled action-adventure open-world game developed by Wild Sheep Studios and published by Sony, with Mikhail Ansel as director, previous creator of Rayman and Beyond Good and Evil, as well as director of Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. Wild would have been set in a Neolithic period, hunting animals, fighting tribes. Development starting in 2014, but in 2020, Ansel retired from the gaming industry. He stated it would still continue, but in 2021 it was cancelled. Namco System 11 is an arcade cabinet system board developed by Namco and Sony, released in 1994. The Namco system is based on the PS1 prototype with 500 kilobits of operating system. Ken Kutaragi would develop it in 1993 to easily port Tekken and other Namco arcade games to the PlayStation. An answer to Sega's Model 2, the System 11 released months before the PS1 launch. Though it was a lot cheaper compared to the Model 2, more arcades bought the System 11, and since then partnered with Sony for the Namco System 12, Namco System 246, which is based on the PlayStation 2 technology, Namco System 357, which is based on the PlayStation 3's architecture. Magic Lab is a research group that researches and develops innovative entertainment experience through technology. They developed PSVR, Move, Camera, and the iToy, headed by Rich Marks, but left in 2018. And since then, I haven't heard much from it since that news, and I don't even know if they're still around, if they helped develop the PSVR 2. And the last time I heard about Magic Lab was a job listing 2 years ago. GameShark is a line of video game cheat products for consoles and PC from Mad Catz. Players can load cheat codes from the disc onto the console internal or external memory so the cheats can apply to the games. It was available for the PS1, PS2, and PSP, and it was a pretty easy way to access game files such as images, audio, and FMV. Folding at Home is a computing project to help scientists develop new antidotes for diseases by simulating the human body protein dynamics. Starting on October 1st, 2000, you could donate your system's CPU and GPU power to distribute computing power to develop such research. In around 2007, Sony made Folding at Home available to users. Over 15 million users contributed to the project, with a total of 100 million computing hours. But in 2012, they ended the service. PlayStation Minis was a series of games made specifically for the PSP Go, a digital-only system. And they were smaller scaled games compared to mobile games, and they actually had some mobile games from like Android actually. But sometime after the program started, they're making it available through the other PSP systems as well as the PS3. In total, there will be 294 PlayStation Minis games. Gears of War 3 is actually somewhat playable on the PlayStation 3. It was found on the PlayStation 3 dev kit, and Epic Games stated they were just testing out the game like engine and graphics and whatnot on the PlayStation 3. And it was probably never intended for it to be on the PS3 as Microsoft owns the rights to the game. But it is still cool to think about. In Season 9, Episode 4, Judge Judy, a woman sued her former boyfriend since he allegedly stole her PlayStation 3, which she paid $2,500. She paid for it through Rent-A-Center, $134 a month for 18 months. In November 2004, Sony released the PlayStation Underground Holiday Demo Disc, which includes 10 demos such as Ratchet & Clank and Star Wars Battlefront. One of those games being Beautiful Joe 2. If you play that demo with a memory card, it will wipe all of your save data. And Sony of course would warn them beforehand, though not everyone was so lucky. And Sony discontinued that demo disc and replaced it with another one, this time with Metal Gear Solid 3, Silent Hill 4, and Ace Combat 5. Sony Ericsson Xperia Play is a smartphone with the DNA of a PSP Go. A dedicated smartphone, Sony originally wanted a PlayStation phone, but opted to use the Xperia brand for Android. Released in April 1st, 2011, the phone can slide down, revealing a gamepad with PlayStation and shoulder buttons. Powered by the Snapdragon S2, Adreno 205, 512 megabytes of RAM, and a resolution of 854 by 480. It supports micro SD card slots. It costs around $140 at launch. It can officially play PlayStation 1 games. With the PlayStation Pocket Store, Crash Bandicoot is installed. The PlayStation 2 can natively support 1080i with some games such as Gran Turismo 4, though it can only work on NTSC UC models and other resolutions too, but it doesn't look the best since there's little to no anti-aliasing and it is stretched. Around 2021, Little Big Planet 1 and 2 servers were being attacked by hackers, with DDoS attacks with unstable servers. Sony was trying to patch up servers from 2008. Sony decided to shut down servers from PS3 and PS Vita Little Big Planet games, cutting off all community-made content. Though Little Big Planet 3 servers are still online, and you can still access those content, though not all. iMode Boy Show is a game developed by Bomber Express and published by Sony. It is the second game featuring the Sony Cats. It is compatible with Docomo iMode mobile internet service in Japan, such as web access, email, and network data. It was actually the first of its kind using mobile and internet, meaning you can connect your PlayStation 1 to the internet, where you can communicate with other players as well as downloading content. There are other games that use the iMode internet, such as Dragon Monsters Warriors 1+2, One Piece Mansion, and Moto Trump Shioyoi. Smash My PS3 is an internet phenomenon starting in Canada from the site planetboredom.net. starting with smashing my iPod. It was one of the earliest internet social experiments, which would smash products in front of a crowd waiting to buy said product. They would smash the Wii and the Xbox 360. It's funny to look at in the old site. They thought that the price would be $400 Canadian, but it turns out to be $549 Canadian. And they would get most of their monies from donations. After the release of God of War, players who destroyed the 2 statues in the throne room at the end of the game will be given a phone number. And if you call this number, you can hear Kratos congratulating you, as well as teasing the next game. And you can get another phone number from beating the hardest difficulty in the game. And in this one, you can hear the creative director David Jaffe. And what's pretty cool is that the phone numbers still work actually. Sony still keep the line active for this day.
I offer you my congratulations and my respect. Together, we shall conquer the perils that lay before us, and we shall always...
Dude, they did it. They found our Easter egg.
Who are you?
It's me, David Jaffe. I directed the game.
What game?
Your game, God of War.
Go away, or...
Dude, don't you get it? These guys, they spent all that time breaking those statues. I mean, they must have taken, like, forever. And then they figured out the whole secret code thing.
I do not know what you are talking about.
We hid this secret pretty damn deep, huh, Kratos? Hey, say, Kratos, what are you so pale for?
I am serious.
You know, up close, you actually look kind of pasty, if you don't mind me saying. It's kind of gross.
Oh, like that's it!
What are we doing, Kratos? Come at us! We gotta make the secret!
He was worse than a screeching harpy. As I was saying, you have found the secret. You have done well. Congratulations, mortal. We will meet again.
Sony originally wanted the PS3 to launch in 2005, but it didn't have a GPU. And in place of a GPU, they were supposed to have XPUs to render 3D graphics. And the ICE team obviously begged Sony not to do it since it would be almost impossible to create games for the system. Now, there's a lot of reasons that I think Sony didn't want a GPU on the PS3. And I think first of all, it would have been expensive since the GPU on the PS3 was around like $120 to manufacture. And since the cell was around $80, and the Blu-ray drive was around like $100, it would have been pretty pricey to manufacture. So if they think if there was no GPU in it, it would be a lot cheaper to manufacture. But of course, every developer was like, no, that's impossible. You're gonna get hate. So they have to include the GPU, and it drives the cost up for the PS3 to manufacture a lot more. Since to manufacture one PS3 with all those parts and systems in place, it would have been $800, and they sold it for $599. So they will lose $300 every time they sold a PS3. And I think another reason that they have was that they were very cocky. And the reason I say that is because the PS2, the highest selling console of all time, they think, we can do no wrong, We killed, the 3DO, Atari, Sega. They're not making games for us. Who's next? Is Nintendo and Xbox. And so since they believe that PlayStation 3 will be the console every developer wants to develop for, then that means if they've developed for PS3, they probably couldn't port those games to other consoles. And they want to have like 100% market dominance, I believe. And that's why, they make these weird decisions. And so Sony partnered with NVIDIA to develop the RSX reality synthesizer, which is based on the NVIDIA 7800 GTX graphics processor card. And I'm really glad Sony didn't try to do some integrated graphics in the PS3. I mean, have you seen 2006 integrated graphics? In 1993 of E3, Sony revealed the price of the PlayStation in North America as it was already out in Japan in 1994. Olaf Olsen called Steve Race to make a brief announcement.
$299.
And it had a pretty big reaction from the audience, and there's a lot to take in if you want to know why they were excited. And it was the cheapest way to get into 3D gaming. Now let's look at other consoles at the time. There was the Atari Jaguar, which released in November 1993 with a $249 price tag, and it boasts as having the first 64-bit console. But it was sort of half-baked as they just threw in some extra processors which somehow made it to 64-bit. And the 3D technology in the console, while it was impressive at the time, it was really hard for developers to develop their games on it. And the system only sold 150,000 units worldwide, with only 50 games licensed to it. By the time the PS1 released, they tried to make a CD add-on, but it failed miserably, and Atari never made another console again. And in the same year the Atari Jaguar would release, the 3DO company launched the 3DO gaming system. It launched in October 4th, 1993 in North America for $700. Since the 3DO company didn't actually manufacture their own product, they had three manufacturers: Panasonic, Goldstar, now LG, and Sanyo. And releasing games on the 3DO has very little licensing fees, meaning devs make more money from sales. That's the reason why there's the $700 price tag, is that they make their money from selling hardware instead of software. And the 3DO had around 263 officially licensed games, but by 1996 the console was mostly dead compared to Sega Saturn and the PlayStation 1. And the 3DO was trying to make a successor called the M2, but that was cancelled, and the M2 chip was used for coffee vending machines. And after the failure of the 3DO consoles, they would end up making third-party games to PlayStation, and they went bankrupt in 2003. And there was the Sega Saturn, the main competitor to the PlayStation, releasing on November 22nd, 1994, 2 weeks before the PlayStation release, also in Japan. The Saturn was comparable to the PlayStation 1 in power-wise, though it was rushed early to compete, and as a result was a little bit harder to develop for. They also made questionable decisions to make the 32X a cheap-weight 32-bit gaming, but it failed miserably. And in E3 1995, the same time when Sony announced $299 price tag, they made a surprise announcement that the Saturn would release the day of. This angered a lot of retailers such as Best Buy, Walmart, and KB Toys, that they would drop the Saturn in favor of the PlayStation. And it didn't help as marketing wasn't prepared, and also the price tag was $399, $100 more expensive. In E3 1997, they announced the Saturn is not our future, angering every fan who bought the Saturn. And not even their next console, the Dreamcast, could save Sega from losing the hardware business. By 1999, they would lose millions and cut over 1,000 jobs. Saturn would only sell 9.26 million units, and its Dreamcast only selling 9.13 million units. By 2001, the Dreamcast was discontinued and Sega officially dropped out of the console race, meaning Sony effectively shot and killed Sega along with every other console developer that wasn't Nintendo. But you know what Nintendo showed in E3 1995? The Virtual Boy. So it didn't help Nintendo when the N64 would release. Sony would cut the price of the PlayStation to $199. Sony ImageSoft was Sony's early attempt at the video game industry. Though they didn't really develop their own games, they published them on Nintendo and Sega systems. Their first published game was Super Dodgeball on NES in 1989. It's an arcade port of the game with the same name in 1987, and it's also part of the Kunio-kun series, a series still going strong. You know River City Girls? Yup, same series. And you know those games I mentioned, like Hook, Chuck Rock, and Johnny Mnemonic? Yup, they were all published by Sony ImageSoft. On May 20, 1992, they would partner with Sega, focusing on the Sega CD peripheral, the first game being Super Shark. Also, that game was supposed to be on Hasbro's console, the Control Vision, where it would use VHS tapes instead of cartridges. Anyway, Sony would publish games based on their movies, like Last Action Hero, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and Bram Stoker's Dracula. In 1995, they would have Kill Flock as president. He would previously worked at Activision and LucasArts, as well as others. His first game was being Demon Stalkers in 1987, and he will be credited on other Sony projects, such as Twisted Metal, Spawn the Eternal, Crash 2, Blasto, etc. But he would pass away in 2021. In July 1995, everything would change for ImageSoft, as they will merge with Sony Computer Entertainment of America, merging all of its staff together. And their video game branch, who made those Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune games, well, they would transfer into Sony Interactive Studios America, or also
989 Studios.
Their last game was Easter Mine.
Jack, are you reading me? Do you want to save your mission data up to this point? Your mission data has been saved.
George Kakiopo, or Kakpi, whatever, is a senior vice president and an engineer of the PlayStation Network. He was caught in a pedo sting operation where he wanted to meet with underage individuals, and Sony obviously fired him. His only game credit is Hardware Rivals for the PlayStation 4, released in 2016, developed and published by Sony. Now, someone thought it was a great idea to throw a God of War 2 promotion party with a decapitated goat. And guests were invited to reach inside the goat to eat the offal inside his stomach, and even challenged them to see who could eat the most. They threw knives at targets, pulled snakes from a pit, topless women handing out grapes, and a man portraying Kratos handing out garlands. Though the part with, reaching out inside the goat's stomach to pull like offals, that part is kind of made up, exaggerated. They just gave out like some beef stew, like some Greek style. But the headless goat is real, and that is such a weird way to market a game. But that's I don't know. Saddam Hussein allegedly bought 4,000 PlayStation 2 consoles to cluster them together to build the most powerful supercomputer, as reported by WorldNet Daily. They also claimed that 12 to 15 PS2s can control a UAV. Some Japanese experts that a PS2 could be adapted to use as a missiles guidance system. As Iraq purchased thousands of PlayStation 2s across the United States, this is because the UN sanctions prevented Saddam from buying any computer hardware for Iraq. Now, I'm not sure the validity of it. I mostly think it's just an explanation, as PS2s back then were really rare to find when they launched. And I think it was just like a scapegoat to say like, oh, Saddam bought all the PS2s because he wants to build a super weapon to dominate the world. I'm really glad no one else tried to dominate the world with gaming systems ever again, right? Right? When the PlayStation 3 launched, the United States Air Force acquired 1,760 PlayStation 3s in a Condor cluster, performing 500 million teraflops per second, making it the fastest computer in the entire US Department. Located in Rome, New York, it was used by the Air Force centers across the country for radar enhancement, pattern recognition, satellite imagery processing, and AI intelligence research, analyzing ultra-high resolutions at a rate of billions of pixels per minute, and can also be used to identify blurred objects flying in space. The PlayStation 3 supercomputer cost around $2 million, and it was decommissioned in 2010 after Sony removed the other OS feature. They also sold the PS3s after it was used. And that's the Iceberg video. There you go. Took a while. But if there's anything I'm missing, guys, just leave it down in the comment section below. Or on Facebook and Twitter. But yeah, I got nothing else. Bye.
But guess what? I will be coming back, and I'm bringing my new toys with me.